What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and today we're talking about the Baltimore Ravens and our season preview series. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you do, be sure to hit that like button and help me out a ton. And if you're new right here, want to see more of this series and more football content in general, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And give me your thoughts on the Baltimore Ravens. How many wins do you think this team can get next year? Who's some X factors, not superstars, but X factors, difference makers who can help this team exceed expectations or fall short? And what are some games you're looking forward to watching this team play next year? Love to have your thoughts. I respond to just about every comment, so let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens down below. So as we go through each section, I'll kind of break down what I'm talking about and go into the specifics of what exactly I mean by those players listed and all that fun stuff. But if you need a deeper explanation, go back and check out the first two videos in this series and you'll get a deeper understanding. I'm just going to kind of quickly gloss over it here just because I've said it a few times. But win range, projected win total, and we'll talk about my kind of outlook on this team. But I think they're a 10 plus win squad. I think they're a double-digit win team. I got them at 13 right now. My pick to win the AFC North. I look at this roster and man, I really dig it, man. This team is the front office. It's John Harbaugh. They do such a great job. They just so consistent in so many different ways. They make so many smart moves. Like look at their draft. They never panicked and just drafted for value. And it's because they had such a great free agency. They cleaned up their roster, had no holes going into the draft. So they had a sober look at the board, and that's the Baltimore Ravens way. And I mean, I hate to say that, I'm a Steelers fan, so I mean, this is like vinegar coming out of my mouth. But all that to say, I think this is the best team in the AFC North and an overlooked team in the AFC in general. But kind of looking at the roster in specific, I think Lamar Jackson. I know he had some down points. That game against Miami, and then like the game or two after before he got hurt, they were rough. But the first 5-6 weeks last year, he was still dynamic with the ball in his hands, Lamar, but he was dotting up down the field. Like, he looked as good a passer as we've seen in his career, if not the best that we've seen him throwing the football. So I think if you're a Ravens fan, there's still reason for optimism that he's getting better and more consistent in that area. He's shown growth. There's no reason to expect that to stop now. So that plus obviously what he can do as a runner, that's awesome. Plus, I mean, if you were to go back a year ago's time right now and say, what three Ravens are going to lead the way in carries? You'd say Lamar, J.K. Dobbins, and Gus Edwards. Well, 2/3 of those dudes weren't even playing last year. J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards finally back and healthy. That's a great 1-2 punch, and it's behind an offensive line that is kind of built for this power run game. Tyler Linderbaum's a little bit of a different fit, but his athleticism feels like a kind of age. You can get him out wide on sweeps and lead the way for Lamar Jackson or J.K. Dobbins. That sounds awesome to me. Ronnie Stanley, a pretty big X factor. He's not literally in the X factor section, but if he's healthy, this offensive line is really, really good. I mean, look at the other tackle spot. Morgan Moses feels like an upgrade, honestly, over Alejandro Villanueva, who they had playing that spot last year. But for Ronnie Stanley, if he stays healthy, this unit is as good as it gets. And we'll talk about one spot where maybe it's a little unsettled, but if you have the Stanley injury and then some uncertainty at that other position, then maybe you look at this offensive line a little less favorably. But healthy and at its best, a really, really solid unit to pave the way for Lamar Jackson and Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, and crew. And then you look at the receivers. We're going to talk about Rashad Bateman later. He's already been talked about a ton by plenty of people this offseason. But I think they do miss one thing in that wide receiver spot right now, especially for how this team is operated as a run-first squad. They want to force defenses to pack into the box. They want them to bring safeties down, and Hollywood Brown could always get behind that. So that feels like a huge loss, and that's where a lot of the bombs from Lamar last year early on were coming from. Hollywood Brown just getting open behind a creeping safety. So maybe it's Tylan Wallace in year two. His 40 time wasn't as good as I thought it would be heading into that draft. But that being said, he was such a good vertical route running wide receiver and just a deep threat in general at Oak State. So maybe he still has that. Or maybe it's signing Will Fuller. He's still available and on the streets, and he's got plenty of speed to spare. So he could certainly fill that role. And once they get that deep threat guy, plus what we'll talk about with Rashad Bateman earlier or later, I think they'll have what they need on top of Mark Andrews being one of the best tight ends in football. Switching sides, the front seven's always solid. They always find a way to just have just enough talent, and like it's an insurance policy with Justin Houston at edge, and it's Calais Campbell comes back, and Michael Pierce is back, and then you draft Travis Jones with extreme value in the third round, and they just do these things, small things throughout the offseason, not earth-shattering moves, but just always shoring up that part of their roster, which I always appreciate. Tyus Bowser, been a really nice fit for previous DC, Wink Martindale. A little bit of a change there. Mike McDonald now the new DC, but then another great value draft pick, David Ajabo. a guy who, if not for the injury he suffered during his pro day, that's a mid-first rounder. Instead, he falls to mid-twos. So value draft surplus there for the Ravens. Then there's sound ways of looking at the board and potential future rotation edge rusher off the start at least. And then Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey, that's a great 1-2 punch. Jalen Armour-Davis, another great value pick. And then draft Kyle Hamilton at 14. He's no way anywhere below 14th if you look at last year's class. No board had him below 14, just surplus value. And then Marcus Williams, big contract, 5 years, $70 million. But you look at, I don't know what exactly that defense is going to look like. They could play too high with those guys. But if you're going to single high safety look with Marcus Williams, one of the best deep safeties in the NFL, and then Kyle Hamilton, who had speed concerns. I just don't think the kid knows how to run a 40 all that well. Didn't have a track background, I guess. But you put him at the sticks, playing close to the line of scrimmage, you take away some of those speed concerns and just let him be the supersized linebacker, almost like maybe what the Cardinals should do with Isaiah Simmons. But that's a heck of a safety tandem to go off that corner duo. So I don't know. There's not many holes in this roster, all that to say. So realistic goal, easily make the playoffs. This team was on their way to doing that last year before all the injuries. They literally went from 8-3 to 8-9. I mean, that's chaotic. And then reach goal, win their third Lombardi. I mean, look at last year. I mean, look at the Rams. I mean, Matt Stafford had I don't want to call it a true MVP type of run, but maybe for last year's standards, that was kind of MVP-ish on their way to the Super Bowl. He had an awesome 4-game stretch, and that's the last thing Lamar Jackson hasn't really shown yet. But we hadn't seen Matt Stafford do it before last year. There's no reason to think Lamar can't do it again this year, or do it for the first time this year. So if Lamar can stay healthy, and then he gets into the postseason and finds that that playoff touch, man, that on top of the rest of the roster, yeah, they can go all the way. Everyone's talking about the Bills on the moves they made, the Chargers, the Chiefs, and it feels like all these teams made all these moves, so they're flashy and you want to talk about it, but the Ravens just got healthy. Little things here, little things there, and then they're kind of in the same spot. Not quite. The Bills have a little bit better of a roster, but it's not far off there. So it's really just kind of amazing to look at this Ravens and how different yet how similar they are to the rest of the AFC. Talk about some X factors here. Rashad Bateman, been talked about a ton by plenty of people this offseason. I think he has what it takes to make that leap this year. Really smooth route runner, and he's my wide receiver 4 in that draft class. And I think it's interesting when you add one more guy who can win between the hashes over the middle parts of the field. Does that open up Mark Andrews? Does it allow him to do different things, line up to different spots of the field? Just kind of a thought there, but that, or you have two guys who can win over the middle of the field at different levels, right? You can literally run levels concepts with those two guys and create some advantages there. Again, I think they still need that deep threat, and I'm not sure Rashad Bateman is that, but as a possession over the field, solid, get open when you need him to, and hold on to the football, I think he can totally be that guy. And then the one spot on the offensive line, it comes with a little bit of concern. Right now, our lad shows Tyree Phillips as the starter over Ben Powers. I kind of liked Powers when he was coming into the NFL draft, but either way, that left guard spot, especially if Ronnie Stanley does miss a significant portion of the season, it looms a little bit larger as a potential hole in that offensive line. But if Phillips or Powers kind of piece it together, have a career year, take a step forward, whatever the case may be, then Stanley would still be a big loss, but it feels like it softens the blow. On the other side of the coin, if they take that step forward, improve, and you have Stanley healthy, then it feels like a really awesome offensive line that allows that offense to do a lot of cool stuff. And then the last guy, Patrick Queen. So all young players for the most part. Patrick Queen, kind of the oldest of the young bunch, but this guy who just really hasn't entirely worked out. Sometimes it's tough. You have like two different angles that these linebackers, right? You have like the Pro Football Focus angle of it, where they give up big plays, guys get open against them, and then maybe people who don't study those numbers as much, they just see big play production. Oh, this guy has a nose for the football. He creates turnovers and stuff like that. And I think both can be true at the same point. But Queen hasn't been as flashy when it comes to creating those turnovers as consistently as someone like a Devin White maybe. Might be talking a little too much there. But guy who has been, despite being a good athlete and being able to move well, hasn't been great in coverage, been picked on a little bit. So if he figures it out, at this point in the career, the guy kind of is what he is. We'll see, but he could be a different story, and maybe he has improved his skills and coverage, and maybe he needed to change in the defense, right? Wink Martindale is a complicated scheme, and honestly, he blitzes a lot from that inside linebacker position. So it'll be interesting to see how he, moves into that Mike Macdonald, defense and what that all looks like. But a dude who's an awesome athlete and kind of what everybody is looking for in that linebacker position. He has that build and that skill set. The talent and the production just hasn't really followed suit. Quickly, some games to watch. We'll get you out of here. You'll see a common thread here. You'll see 3 playoff teams and 2 of the 3 coming in the AFC. So week 4 against the Buffalo Bills. I just said I think the Bills and the Ravens. Bills have the best roster in my eyes in the AFC, and it feels like the Ravens aren't that far off at home. That's nice, but the biggest thing about this is seeding, right? Anything you can do to get a potential spot higher than Buffalo or the 1 seed at that point, because I think Buffalo, they're quite literally my pick to win the AFC. Anything you can do to get a leg up on the Bills is necessary, because we're talking about Lamar, who has struggled in the playoffs. Do you want to take him up to Buffalo that late in the year, or that early in the year in January? Yeah, probably not. If people are concerned about what would Joe Burrow have looked like if they had to go to Buffalo instead of Kansas City, some of those similar concerns can be voiced there than for Lamar. So anything you do to make that a home game is massive, but also just a heavyweight fight between the best teams in the AFC. Yeah, watch that game. Also, should be noted, I don't put division games in here. So, every time the Ravens play the Bengals, I know that's a game to watch. These are 3 different ones. And then next up, the New Orleans Saints is the NFC side of it. But again, a team that I think is playoff caliber, especially in a weaker NFC, and it's on Monday Night Football. That's what the MNF stands for, if that didn't come to you. But it also comes on a Monday night game where the week prior they played on Thursday night. So it's kind of interesting. You look at that game and that much time, it's a pretty lengthy break. You are going down to New Orleans, but sizable break in between, and you're playing on national TV. Feels like one where you really create some in-season, mid-season momentum at that, right where you might start to get into a lull. You can go out, be the topic of conversation, create that spark for your season on Monday Night Football, and kind of propel your public stock, if that makes sense. And then later on against the Broncos, again, a team that I think both these teams maybe fighting for wild card spots against one another, might be fighting for wild card seeding, but they also might be division winners at the same time. So it's really interesting. And then if they're division winners, how does that shake out 2 through 4 or 1 through 4? So plenty of playoff implications, obviously, and 2 of the best teams in the AFC. But I also I'm always interested in these videos, like where's the team at when they start the season versus where they're at late in the year. So it'll be interesting to be like, this is what the Ravens look like against top tier AFC competition with the Bills, and then end of the season AFC competition with the Broncos. Like, did they look better or did they look worse? So that barometer is always interesting. So a couple of reasons why I picked those games as my games to watch. But let me hear your takes about the Baltimore Ravens down in the comments section. What are some matchups you're looking forward to this upcoming season with Baltimore? Who are some X factors, and what do you have this team coming away with in the winning column? Love to have your thoughts down below in the comment section. I respond to just about every comment as well. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button to help me out a ton. And if you're new right here, want to see more football content in your life, just hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej. Signing off.